The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Scaffold Plank Inspection. Height safety is key. Before we get started, I have a few notes to go over. Everyone is in listen-only mode. That means you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. If you have a question at any time during this presentation, please go to your GoToWebinar control panel and type your question in the question box, and we will answer all of your questions at the end of this webinar. Now I'd like to introduce you to our presenters, Michael Alley, Finance Director, and Patrick Gajewski, General Manager for Indian Mill Plank. We will now begin today's webinar.
Good morning, everybody. This is Michael. I am with Indian Mill, and Patrick is with me as well. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been with Indian Mill for a little over 2 years now. Patrick's got over 5 years of experience. He was originally in the shop and has moved up into the front of house. And so he knows about all things when it comes to wood planking. A little bit about Indian Mill. We are a specialist in wood scaffold planking. We're based in Houston. We have 2 proprietary products that we make that are made of wood. That have a little bit of a different kind of safety and strength characteristic than the standard solid wood scaffold plank. But for the most part, we know wood and we know scaffolding. We don't necessarily understand all the components of the metal side, but we can tell you whether or not wood's good and what is safe and what has the correct strengths. And so thank you for your time today, and we look forward to sharing a little bit about what we know when it comes to the wood platforms that you guys are on and how to stay safe at heights. Just so you know, one of the main reasons why we recommend that everybody be involved in inspecting their scaffold plank is just because the risk of board damage is very prevalent, whether it's from water, from time, use. I mean, going up and down the scaffolds can cause issues. So we just want to let you know about some of the key things that we found that can risk the strength of your boards and therefore potentially even the safety of your employees. Most boards will end up over time having multiple forms of damage. And so don't just look for one issue on board. Be aware of all the different things that can happen. Wood is an organic fiber, and it can have issues and degrade over time. And so because of that, we would tell you that depending on what part of the country you're in, boards can have very different lifespans. Somebody that's here in Texas or in Florida may have a board that only is able to last a year. Somebody that's in Colorado where it's drier may be able to have a board that lasts multiple years. But even at that, these guidelines will at least give you a perspective of what to look for to keep people safe. When we get through these next couple of slides, we're going to talk initially about the board damage and what you're expecting, all of it on a visual basis. There are technical things that you could look for or different types of testing, but this is mostly about visual inspection. Later on, we're going to talk a little bit more about how to store your boards safely as well. But above all, one of the things that we just want to make everybody kind of focus on is when you're at heights, safety is paramount. And so if there's ever a concern, the best thing you can do is to not use that board. So with that, I'm going to move into the next slide and hand it off to Pat to talk about weather.
So weather, that's the environment that we put our boards in, and it impacts the life of the board in heat, humidity, dry, cold, wet. These all can impact the integrity and safe length of life. Dry conditions tend to cause splitting. Wet conditions, decay. Storing your boards, if they're wet, will cause rot. Moisture is a key to the board also. We will not let a board go out if it doesn't fall into the range of 10 to 19%. If it's too high, we want to accept raw material. If it's too low, we won't accept raw material. If it's too low, it means the fibers are weak already, so we just won't push it through our processes. You know, our best bet is using a moisture meter for all material that comes through all raw material that comes into the plant. And you know, when we'll touch on issues of what happens if the board's too dry later on in the slides. You know, so we'll move on from there, go to the next slide.
So one of the main things that all of you guys encounter is OSHA is involved in probably all of your job sites or have been at some point in the past. OSHA does not certify any scaffold plank. They set out a specification, which is from the American Lumber Standards. And so if you want to, you can actually refer to the OSHA 3150 guidebook that was revised in 2002. That was out by the Department of Labor. But most of all, one of the main things that is when we're talking about scaffold plank inspection, there's effectively two different types of people that can say that the inspection has been performed in a reasonable manner. You're either a qualified person, which means you've been tested or have some type of degree or certificate that says that you pass the skills needed in order to know what is right and wrong, or OSHA defines it as a competent person, somebody who can see hazards and make wise decisions to correct and eliminate risk. We do recommend to all of our customers that when boards are stored, that they are inspected at that point in time. And we also recommend that after use and going into storage, that boards are inspected. We know that this can be somewhat of a time-consuming process. Some of you guys vary in different sizes in terms of the amount of work that you guys do. And so you might have large scaffold yards, or you might just have a couple hundred boards. But regular inspections is one of the keys to keeping people safe.
Scaffold plank damage, end splits. Now, you think that's really easy to see, but ALS calls the end split on the end of the board. You can have it the width of the width of the board on the face. If as it goes on both sides, if it passes, let's say a 2x10, if it passes, which is a nominal size, if it passes the 10 inches, they're repairable. We can take banding and metal banding and band it together and repair it that way, or drive a rod through it at that to stop the splitting in that area. All of our boards go out, all of our DI-65 boards go out with twisted screws on each end of it. It's a proprietary screw that we use that stops the splitting at that point when it hits it. But boards are fiber, so it could pick up later on in there depending on how the environment used is. And that's any scenario the board should be retired if it goes too far on end splitting or has too much decay, like you see on the top picture. That is a board that shouldn't be in use at all, including the bottom one. It just travels too far down the board. Rot, decay and rot may occur because of water exposure, chemical spillage, or insect attack. Wood knots can be a source of rot and decay. If it's out in the environment, you have knots, the rain will puddle there and drive into the board and hold in that area. So of course, if water is standing in that area, it's gonna rot. Be aware of broken boards, and this is all in the visual inspections when you're bringing the boards down and you're putting the boards out, you need to check your knots, make sure there's none that are gone in your boards, because if they're loose and are lost, they are not acceptable to be put on the scaffold. Improper storage, we'll talk about that a little later, but that is the key, is to store your boards in the correct manner, and that'll give you a longer life to the boards. Once again, remove any plank from service when visible decay is on the boards, and you'll see that those boards should not be in use at all.
One of the things that I would like to add about decay and rot is oftentimes when job sites have experienced rain, workers will often use scaffold plank as walkboards to get across the muddy surfaces to the scaffolding. It is not wise and highly not advisable to use these boards again on a scaffold, because the amount of moisture that they absorb being across the muddy surface, particularly even for a number of days, makes them unsafe to use in the long term.
One more thing, guys, if you're a stucco person, the alkaline in the stucco will rot the boards from the inside out. They will be, when you're visually inspecting them, if the board has lost a significant amount of weight to it, that's a telltale sign that your board is rotting from the inside out and should be taken out of usage.
So notching drill holes, dents, depressions, and on another page we talk about saw curves. These are often occurring as a result of either scaffold construction, trying to get around an obstacle. There might be a pipe or something that people choose to notch a section out of a board. Doing work up on the scaffold may cause, with a saw, may cause a saw curve. All of these reduce the effective width of a board, which reduces its ability to hold the weight that's recommended. So, for example, the board that's in the middle right here that has a notch out of it, that board would no longer pass any inspections for being able to hold the appropriate amount of weight. That board would have to be retired. There are times where notching may be acceptable, but only a qualified person should be able to tell you when that's acceptable, and there are probably other mitigating construction things that they would recommend, such as plywood over the top of the section, in order to spread out the risk from the board that has been notched. Overall, though, if a board does have notching or a drilled hole, drilled holes often are areas where decay will occur, as Pat mentioned earlier, and just it ends up risking a board suffering from weakness.
So scaffold plank damage and other areas, warping, face splits, face breaks. Warping is any deviation from a true or plane surface, bowing, corking, a deviation edge, it's on the edgewise from a straight line drawn end to end. Cupping is cupping's terrible. It's a trip hazard when, especially when you're up in the air and you're trying to watch where you're walking, and you got tools and equipment, and you can't keep your eyes down at your feet all the time. So it is it's a very it's an item that should be taken out if you have extreme cupping. Twisting, some of these can be fixed, right? Twisting, if you're in a super like Colorado or Alaska, and you're in a super dry climate where in above sea level extreme areas, and your boards start twisting, sometimes if you take a water hose and put some water on it, the boards will straighten back out. Cupping, if you put weight on the end of it and let it and the weight over time will take the cupping out. That's another reason why we put our patented twisted pins on the end of the boards, is to help with that, to alleviate those areas. Oftentimes, we move through drying. More though, drying may help correct these misalignments, especially in the case of cupping. A plank that poses a tripping risk due to a warp issue should be removed from service. Narrow face splits, open splits on the narrow face, that's basically 9 times out of 10, it's forklift damage, where the forklift comes in and didn't and drives into the narrow face. That breaks the board. Should be taken out of production. Face breaks on the wide face are often caused by overloading. Those very hazardous. That has a tendency for the board to be catastrophic and break into and will fall.
One of the things that Indian Mill has ended up using for part of its products is Rhino Skin. It is actually a epoxy that helps repel additional moisture, but also maintains the interior moisture that a board already has. Another example that's on the open market that you could choose to use is Thompson's Water Seal. Rhino Skin, though, is an environmentally friendly product. And one of the things that you can do with Rhino Skin is put some sand in the mix and actually create a little bit more of a grip surface for traction. Some of our customers that are up north often like this product because when it gets to be closer to the winter time, it can help with some grip as the boards get colder. When we get boards, they are often extremely slick, especially the solid boards. And that's just because of the density of fibers of the boards that are used in scaffold plank, the board themselves are just naturally slick. If you could see some of the trucks that we get in sometimes with the hard braking that the semi-trailers do, you'd be amazed at how much those boards will move around just because of how slick they are. But this is just a product that we offer that helps with kind of repelling water moisture. We do believe that it adds to the life of a board, but for the most part, it is just a safety thing that we like to add on and recommend, that it helps to improve life and in some cases traction when it heights.
So proper scaffold plank storage. The 4 S's of scaffold plank storage: select, stack, store, and shelter. You know, if you're going to be in the, if you look at the picture there, you see the space in between the boards. That allows air in there. So if you do stack them and they have moisture, the air will be revolving around the plank. It'll help dry it out. If you ever go to lumber mills and they don't have a heat treatment plant, they stack 2x4s, 2x6s, 10s, 8s, whatever, and stack them up high and stack them in that manner all the way up until they get to the proper moisture temperature rating. It is imperative either you can cover it, tarp it, but you have to get air in between the boards. So proper scaffold plank storage, they use an inspection guidelines mentioned earlier. Select scaffold plank that show signs of degraduation or damage and discard. These could be cut down to use as for mud seals for the feet of the scaffold. Yeah, these pictures are to the extreme and extreme use, which I've seen a number of our customers come in with used boards, and they look like this and they're continually used. We can't tell you not to use those boards, but we would highly recommend that they would be taken out of use. And one thing, like I talked earlier about alkaline, our boards weigh 3.9 pounds per foot. So an 8-footer weighs 31.2 pounds. When you're putting the new boards on the scaffold, you should recognize that weight and get a feel for it. So when you're taking them off, and so you can get a feel for the weight. And so when you know that they're being, when they're too light, we can take them out, and you can look for rot and signs of distress.
As Pat mentioned earlier, one of the keys is stacking the boards when it comes to storing them for a long period of time. These aren't designed for, this isn't a process designed for when boards are temporarily out of service. They're going from one job site to the next. This is really for boards that are going into the winter break when not a lot of work is being done, or if you have fewer projects than normal and boards are needing to be stored. One of the things that we recommend, and we will often tell you that if you are interested in, we call them stickers, but they're usually 1-by-1 boards. If you need them, if you pretty much pay the shipping, we can send them to you. But what we do is you take a set of boards and put kind of either a 2-by-2 or a 2-by-4 under the bottom, and stack the boards. We recommend 5 across and no more than 10 high, so a total bundle of 50 boards. But between each layer, use the 1-by-1 sticker, as you see here, perpendicular to the face, and stack the boards across, so that allows the airflow to move underneath the boards and dry the boards out that have potentially been too wet, or at least provide enough moisture for the boards that are on the drier side. The main reason for the airflow side is just to reduce mold growth and let some of the wetter planks that you have dry out during a longer storage period of time. When it comes to storage, the key thing that we would tell you, and we discussed it a little bit later on the next slide, is where it's located. One of the key things is really just having solid, dry, level ground. You don't want to stack wood too high because it risks tipping and potentially being an injury risk to an employee. Boards that are 16 feet long are over 60 pounds and are extremely dangerous if stacked too high. For example, we would say that a 3-stacker, effectively 300 boards, if it fell over, has enough crushing power to potentially be a fatal injury to somebody. So typically, making sure that boards are evenly distributed when they're stacked. But typically, in this situation, what we do is we use 4x4s, usually in multiple places underneath the board, to allow airflow underneath, but also to make it easier for our forklifts to be able to move the product around. It reduces the risk of damage. This is actually a photo of raw wood as it comes in from the mill, but we do the same thing with our finished product that we sell to customers like you guys.
Proper scaffold plank storage is key. If you use the tarps like in the one picture, you have to make sure you get space underneath them, because if you're in a humid area like Texas or Florida, inside that tarp, it'll actually rain inside, and it's actually worse for the board. So once again, you got to have air circulating. Now the key is always to store it inside a warehouse or inside. If you look at the top picture, there it's a lean-to metal roof. Rain had very little chance of getting to it. And those are optimal places. Once again, airflow and covering is key for long scaffold plank. Proper scaffold plank storage. These 4 steps are the recommended manner of proper storage of boards. When in use, please note that the different climates may impact your recommendations. Scaffold plank needs maintain some moisture in order to not dry out and split. The recommended moisture level is 10 to 19% and may be tracked with a moisture meter.
Well, we thank you guys for all of your time, and we'll be taking questions here in a second. For the most part, what I just want to wrap up with is just that when it comes to being at heights, making sure that the boards are safe, that they can carry the appropriate amount of weight for the people that are on them. As Pat mentioned, if a board is too light, it's probably got decay. You may not be able to see it, but you can often tell by picking up a board. But as we kind of review these metrics and everything, these will help you to know your product, know your inventory better, and will be a better resource for keeping your guys safe.
All right. If you have questions, please go to your GoToWebinar control panel, type the questions in the question box. And while we're giving you a minute to do that, I'd like to tell you about our next MCAA webinar. It will be titled Mortar Color, the Selection Process. This webinar will be presented on this coming Friday, July 17th at 10 a.m. Central. You can head over to our website, masoncontractors.org/live to register. All right, gentlemen, you don't have any questions yet, but if anybody on this webinar does have questions, feel free. If you can either reach out to Michael or Patrick at Indian Mill, or feel free to reach out to anyone here at the MCAA, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with these gentlemen. So that everybody knows, a copy of this webinar with their PowerPoint will be available later today in the on-demand section of the MCAA's website. Gentlemen, I think that's going to conclude today's webinar. The MCAA would like to thank Michael and Patrick for an awesome presentation. Be safe, everybody, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you all. Have a great day and be safe at heights.